It's time for Ralph and Vicki's Off-Grid podcast with your host, outdoor writer Pete Rogers. We're coming to you from the Hunter's Blend Coffee Studio. Hunter's Blend Coffee, defending hunting one cup at a time. Now, let's get into this week's show.
Welcome back to Off-Grid with Ralph and Vicki. I'm your host, Pete Rogers, and today we have a special guest with us.
Oh, he's special.
We have a special guest with us. We have a Illinois conservation officer, Mr. Steve Beltran, is going to be with us today, and he's going to be answering questions that we have that we think that a lot of outdoorsmen, hunters, fishers, fishermen, trappers, recreational people have when it comes to conservation laws. So we invited him here today because there's a lot of, again, I think there's a lot of sportsmen, myself included, who are like, okay, when the game warden walks up, what happens? What are you supposed to do? What kind of things?
Right, don't pick up your gun and aim it at him. Here, it's empty.
No,
Scare the tar out of him.
Well, that's a great.
And right now it's gun season.
It's gun season
right. It's
here in
opening
Illinois.
day, second season.
Well, yep.
And that's a great segue, Vicki. Surprise, but good
thanks.
for you. Good
See
for
how
you.
they are.
So Steve, tell us if you're walking out to some hunters who are maybe walking to their truck at the end of a hunt, and you pull up, what do you expect to happen? What would you like for hunters to know?
Well, first and foremost, when we go out, we're looking for compliance with the law. And oftentimes we don't have a choice to pick what time that is. And so like on a busy day, if there's a lot of people out and stuff like that, sometimes it might be at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, which is great because everybody's down and having lunch. But other times it might be around 4 or 5 o'clock, that perfect witching hour. Now, I try not to get out there and check you while you're in the stand within the last half hour because we all know how important that is. But at the same time, if I have an on-view violation or something, I might have to come out there. And, so we do the best that we can. But our intent is not to disrupt your hunt or to disturb the animals. It's just simply to make sure that you've got all the laws correct and everything. If we could check you back at the vehicle, that's great. But if we had to wait for everybody to get back to the vehicle, well, then we'd only check one person a day, right?
Good point,
yeah. So, we do the best that we can.
Hope you check somebody else today.
That's right. We do the best that we can to try and get out and check people. But also, too, sometimes when we're coming out, we might be on an ATV, we might be in a vehicle, we might be on a snowmobile, we might be walking, and it depends on the terrain, whether or not sort of cover you're in and stuff. It's easier for me to bring a vehicle with. I've got all my paperwork, I've got all my computers, so the check is going to be a lot easier. Oftentimes, I feel that vehicle doesn't interrupt the wildlife as much as me walking 500 yards, quarter of a mile or something back into where you're at. And so, if you see the vehicle coming in, generally, I'll try and address you, give you a short wave. I try not to make any noise and stuff. I'll get out slowly, don't slam my door or whatever, and I'll show you, hey, I want to see your hunting license. I'll hold up a couple of fingers, indicating a license. I might signal you to come out of your tree stand. It just depends on what you're hunting at the time and stuff. If I see a violation, in other words, you're not wearing blaze orange, if it's required, or you're hunting with a rifle and it's maybe just shotgun season,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you better come down.
Yeah. Then it's usually get down now, But,
it's not nice then.
Yeah. Well, for the most part, I try and remain friendly and nice and stuff. But yeah.
Well, let me interrupt you on that. Let's say, for example, we'll talk deer hunting, for example, and there's a hunter in a stand and you want them to get down. Well, they have a loaded weapon in their hand, we're assuming.
Yeah.
How do you want them to do that so that it's safe for everyone?
Good question.
I mean, we're trying to do 101 here.
Yeah. So the 101 is obviously you're going to use safety, what you normally do up and down the stand. For me, that means unloading your firearm if you're going to lower it down or sling it on your back. But I like to see an unloaded firearm. Most people, when they're drawing it up and stuff, it should be unloaded anyways for their safety, right? So if I ask you to come down, I'll ask you to unload the firearm. I'll note the number of rounds that you're taking out because that's something we look for. Okay. And so ask you to come down, you'll climb down. I'll ask to inspect your firearm at that point in time. I might ask you for your rounds because sometimes, depending on what you're hunting, maybe lead's restricted in a certain area. If you're hunting,
for
steel
like waterfowl, you need steel,
or just just depending on where you're at and stuff. Right. And so I'll inspect the firearm. I'm going to be asking you for your hunting license, right? Any stamps or permits that you guys might have, and then depending on whether you're an archery hunter or not, like for us, we've got a special card to possess a firearm in Illinois, a firearm owner identification
and that's
card.
important to point out to listeners who are listening to this, maybe from all over the country, is first know what the rules are in the state you're hunting.
Sure.
Yes.
Because they are very different here than where I'm from in South Carolina, as far as what you have to have, the individual tags. They look different. You have to have them on your possession at all times. All those things you better know.
Right.
Well, and
When you
like
get
we were
there.
talking the other day about with Illinois, like you just said, we call them FOID cards. It's your firearm ownership ID card. And first shotgun season, Ralph and I are getting ready to head out, and I'm like, hang on a second, Ralph. I'm like, do you got your FOID card on you?
Because you have to have that on your possession.
If you're holding a gun, you need to have your FOID card.
No idea what you're talking about.
Yep.
Right.
So what is that? What do you call it?
It's a firearm identification card.
But you called it something else.
It's a FOID, F-O-I-D.
Firearms
ownership
identification.
identification.
Okay.
Right.
All
Yeah.
And that means what?
Well, just for Illinois, they pre-vet anybody that wants to possess a firearm or ammunition. So you have to apply to the Illinois State Police for this particular card. I think it's a $10 fee. It's good for 10 years. And essentially they do a background check on you and make sure that you...
So that's different from a concealed carry card.
Oh, yes. Yeah, totally
Okay.
different. Yeah.
All right. So non-resident, do they have to have that as well?
No, they're exempt if they're a non-resident, assuming that you're within the compliance of the laws of your residing state. So if another state has that card, then they have to display that or whatever. But
like my state doesn't have that.
Doesn't have it. So then, as long as you're whatever, if all you have to do is show your driver's license for over there, then that's what you have to show for us over here as well.
All right. So that clears it up a lot, because I would be freaking out if you said I have to have a FOID. Oh gosh, I'm illegal and didn't know that.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and so, but we would look at your hunting license and see that you're a non-resident, so then I wouldn't ask for that, But if you got down, likely as I'm going to be looking at your plates as I pull up, I saw as I came here, non-resident plates and stuff, so I would know not to check.
So
that
you're
type of
looking
stuff.
at all the plates in our yard.
I'm checking everything.
Okay,
yes.
see?
Always.
Yes,
Yeah, always.
Yes.
It's kind of ingrained
But that's
in
what
you
you
to check
do.
it.
I mean, that's
Well,
It is,
Yeah.
yeah. You just kind of pick up on certain things. Just as if you were out in the field, you see something flash over there, you're thinking, well, grab the binos, you want to see what it is, a buck or doe or whatever, and what's moving and stuff. And so we have the same thing, but with criminals, I guess. So
All right. So you want them to unload their gun, come down.
unload, come down. If they're in a ground blind, they don't necessarily have to unload it. I'll give them instruction. But to safely get out of a tree stand, you're going to have to unload the gun, come down. If you could hold on to the firearm, you could set it to the side. We always ask that you don't point it at us at any point in time, whether it's loaded or unloaded. Proper gun safe handling techniques and stuff apply at all times. Makes me uncomfortable to have that barrel lasering across me.
Yeah.
Sometimes they laser their buddies, as they're going, "Hey Billy, you got this," and "Hey Johnny,"
I know.
So I'll be vocal about that.
I hit the ground when that happened.
We don't want anybody doing that. So, but and then just ask for your documents, your hunting or fishing license, whatever it is that you got going on, and then any special permits that you might have, and stuff like that.
Well, let me ask you this for maybe an Illinois resident. Do you have separate license tags for hunting, fishing, trapping? Or can you have one?
Well, you
No,
have a
we
sportsman's license.
So we have
Which
a
is
sportsman,
which is your
everything.
hunting and fishing together, but you can't trap on that.
Correct.
And just because you have a hunting license, that gives you the right to go hunting, but you still need hunting
permit.
squirrels. But if you're going to hunt deer, you need to get a deer permit.
Yeah, we have big game license as well. Okay. All right. So just make sure all your documentation is right.
Right.
Yeah, make sure you've got your documentation right. Don't rely on the folks at the point of sale places where you buy them. I mean, they do a great job at selling this stuff, but oftentimes people go in, especially from out of state, and say, "Hey, I'm here to hunt deer. What do I know?" Well, he might have come over from the automotive section, or might be working cashier.
I had that exact issue.
We've had that.
I had that exact issue where they sold me the tag, but not the license.
Not the license.
Then I had to go
Habitat
online. When I
stamp or
got here,
something.
they said, "Hey, do you?" I thought I had everything.
Correct.
But then I went and checked, and they had me check, and I had to go buy the license.
Right. Yep.
So make sure you have everything.
Yeah, make sure you have everything, and everything's in the digest. Also, if you get a chance, I always kind of mention this to people. If you're going to be planning a big trip, call around ahead of time, get to know the local conservation officer. Call them on the phone. I get people call all the time and say, "Hey, I'm coming out for deer hunting. What do I need to know?" And I'll explain everything to them over the phone, no problem. then he's got my phone number. He could, give me a call.
And you don't mind that at all?
No, all of our numbers are posted publicly and stuff, and that's what we're here for. We're here to share information. I'd rather give you good bits of advice before you get here rather than, have to drag you through the court system,
Well, and like you've always told us before, too, is transparency.
That, and that's something you taught us, really.
Yeah.
And I think it's just what a wealth of information. And that's just, Steve told us, he said, here's the bottom line for anytime you're anywhere, just be transparent.
Tell the truth.
Tell the truth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, oftentimes, we deal with people so much, and I understand people get nervous and stuff, but, so many people just lie to us, right? So if we get that, it's difficult for us because we want to try and educate you and apply the right amount of pressure to make sure it doesn't happen again. And if you're not transparent about it, then it makes it difficult for us as well. So,
right.
But if a guy got down, and I've had this, guys from out of state and stuff, and he'll hand me a deer tag that he spent $411 and another hunting license, and he spent $55 on it, but he doesn't have a $5 habitat stamp. And the guy's like, well, geez, I didn't know, But if he got to the point where he starts telling me, well, I didn't think you needed to have that and this and that, and they're kind of making up an excuse or a lie about it. Well, then, geez, if you just said, hey, I didn't have it, I believe that you would have spent the $5 anyways,
you already spent $500.
Yeah, you just spent $500. So, them digging themselves into a hole and stuff. And, honestly, if you are doing something wrong, well, then the hole's already there. So I get that. But for people that make an honest, innocent mistake and stuff, it's a lot easier to work something out with somebody,
right, and
be transparent about it and say, hey, I'm doing the best I can. I'm an ethical hunter. I've got my safety card. I've got permission and stuff.
Right.
If it's a simple oversight, we all have them. I make mistakes too. So it makes it easier for us to work something out with you, to try and correct
Tell
the action.
Tell the truth, be transparent.
For sure.
And just try to realize that you're trying not to intentionally break the law.
Correct. Right.
Now, having said that, what's the most common violation you run into for hunters? We'll get to anglers.
For deer season? You know what I mean?
Well, just in general.
For the most part, with social media and the pressure, right? The pressure to advertise your big game, so many people are just forgetting their fundamentals. Grandpa, he'd go out, he'd shoot a deer, he'd run over, he'd put a tag on it, and then they drag it back to the house. And maybe grandma might come out with a camera or two or something and snap a picture and then put it on the fridge. But nowadays, with the light setting and this and that, and everybody wants to get the perfect picture, they're not tagging their deer. They're not tagging their big game, right? So immediately they want to get down and a couple of selfies and this and that. And, well, let me check my eyes. I don't look right. Let me do this. And so people are constantly, when they put that on there, there's always somebody, whether it's an ex-husband or wife or a buddy of yours, that goes, hey, that deer's not tagged. And then, they're transparent, right, with me. And then all of a sudden I got to come find you, So one of our biggest problems today is just the social media glorification without tagging it. And there's ways that you could tag your animal, and you could, tuck your hand around that tag if you want or something, and you could kind of still see it's hanging out. You could put the tag on the leg, and that could be off to the side.
Now, Steve, for our state and other states, you get like a head tag, an antler, or let's say a head tag, right, and a body tag for the carcass,
leg tag.
A leg tag.
Right.
If you put the leg tag on and you punched it out, are you 100% legal to move that animal?
So first off, look at your tag.
Right.
Every state's different, right?
Right.
So for some counties by us, it might say right on there, if you kill a buck, this tag goes on the antler. On the antler, right. And so it doesn't give you an option to put it on there. However, during archery season, you get two tags. You get the head and the leg. During a firearm deer season, depending on where you get the tags, you may get just a head or leg tag and a check station tag. So those plastic peel tags that you have, depending on the state that you go, the province that you're in, read it, because it's going to tell you, hey, this is where it goes, So from here all the way across North America, it might say you got to put it on this side or this leg or that leg or whatever. So just double check those instructions. For us here, archery, they're going to give you two tags, one for the head, one for the leg. For the male, it doesn't matter, whether you attach either or. However, for firearm season in some counties, they just give you one tag, and it says on there, hey, if it's an antler deer, put it on the antler. If it's non-antler deer, put it on the leg, because you have to bring it to the check station. And that's where they give you that secondary tag, is at the check station.
Okay.
So always check your local regulations, double check your seasons, all that stuff. Little micro nuances make a difference depending on what's happening and what zone and stuff. So it can be confusing at times. The digest is there. Our numbers, our emails, all that other stuff. Pick up the phone, reach out to us. We're always here, happy to help, that type of stuff. So
okay. So the most common mistake you run in with deer hunters is not tagging it at the point of kill.
Tagging it immediately upon kill.
Immediately upon kill.
Yep. That's how the language, specifies immediately upon kill.
They throw it on their truck. They do this. They take it to a better spot for a photo or something, or to show a buddy.
They field dress it. They don't want to get the tag dirty.
It's interesting how the language can be so similar yet so different. Because again, in my state, it's at the point of kill.
Okay.
And yours says immediately upon kill.
Correct.
Which technically, I guess, could be the same thing.
Yeah.
That means before you move it, you put a tag on it.
Right.
That's what it means.
We'll be right back with more Ralph and Vicki's Off-Grid podcast with your host, Pete Rogers. Welcome back to Ralph and Vicki's Off-Grid podcast with your host, Pete Rogers. We're coming to you from the Hunter's Blend Coffee Studio. Now, let's get back into this week's show.
So for us, immediately upon kill, if bingo, you shot it, and the animal's dead, it's laying there, it's bled out, it's taking its last breath, and there's does in front of you, and maybe you want to harvest another animal, our law says immediately upon kill. So if the animal's dead, now if it runs off, and so on and so forth, there's other animals come in, and you would normally wait for that animal, to expire 20 minutes, 30 minutes, which a lot of guys like to do. And stuff.
Right. Right.
So, ours is articulated immediately upon kill. It's very restrictive. As soon as that animal's killed, it's got to be applied. So
your hunt's over at that point.
Well, even if you have additional tags, your hunt's not over, but you've got to get down, tag it immediately upon kill. So we understand there's a dynamic to a lot of that, right? And we understand the laws are there. We make it very restrictive because that's the definition. So many people would say, they'll come up with another creative excuse as to circumvent that, right? So that's why we say, hey, you can't do it. It's immediately upon kill. And, speed limit's 55 miles an hour. If you're doing 56, nobody really minds, but technically it's 55. Technically immediately upon kill. Yeah.
All right, and I'm just trying to.
Sure.
Because how we're going to get people asking.
Yeah.
So let's just say you're shotgun hunting. Mm-hmm. You're in a stand. You shoot a deer. You watch that deer run and drop. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you look and there's more deer coming.
Correct.
And you got 2 tags.
Right.
Can you legally shoot another deer?
So if the deer's dead, right? The deer's dead.
And it's dead.
And it's dead. It's immediately upon kill. Okay. So what happens is, well, let's just say there's a buck that comes out and you got a buck tag and you shoot it and he goes off and he lays down. Now here comes a bigger buck. Okay. So, and you shoot the bigger buck. You think, oh, okay. So you're in violation, right? Because you didn't tag the one immediately upon kill. That invalidates your first tag immediately. Okay, that's why the law is very defined on it, immediately upon kill. And so it's for those people that want to circumvent the tagging aspect of it, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's where the practical application comes from.
Actually, I didn't think about it that way because we've made that comment before. We're like, okay, well, if a big doe comes in, I can go ahead and take her with my shotgun.
But don't
and
get
then
down.
wait.
You know
and
what
don't
I mean?
get down. But if you see her done.
Right.
I need to get down, tag it, and climb back up.
Yeah, and so for us, it's it's generally that trophy animal that we're focused on.
Right. Oh yeah, it's not the doe.
And I can't interpret the law for every warden out there, So, but this is how things work through my mind, right? And so, if you have 2 either sex tags and you haven't killed any bucks this year,
right?
And first one comes by and you shoot it, and there's another one standing there. Well, you're not trying to circumvent the law because you have another valid tag in your pocket.
Yes,
right.
Right.
And so, the intent aspect, the law says immediately upon kill. But so if you shot the second one, you got down and you tagged them both. Again, I can't speak for everybody, but hey, all right, so that's there. But I've had situations where a guy will kill, a small 6 or something. It's the rut, everything's coming around.
And he sees daddy.
And here comes the big guy. Well, you didn't immediately, tag that upon kill. And that's why the law becomes so restrictive for that.
And really, you guys and girls, you're trained to read a person, and you pretty much know if that person had malice behind what they were doing. Right? Honestly, I mean, you can... Right.
So... Also, when we go to apply these models, it's, the totality of the circumstance. If dad and grandpa or say grandpa and junior are out there, and, the grandpa shoots a doe or something and junior's there, he's got a valid, so we understand the totality of things. There's no ill intent and on. It's still immediately upon kill, but you could have two different scenarios. This guy, he's trying to steal wildlife. He's trying to circumvent the law. And you've got this other guy that, geez, he never tagged it at all. He just forgot. He got wrapped up in it. This is his son's first deer and everything. And then he ends up tagging it later on that night. And so are they both in violation? Yes. Do they both get the same tickets? Likely not, because you apply the reasonableness to it, from that perspective.
Right. So, you look at the as you said, the totality of the whole experience and see what.
And he made a statement that hit me because the first time we met was years ago, and you made me look at something differently. And that you called it, just like you said there, stealing wildlife.
Right.
I'm telling you, to that day, I never looked at it that way. Yeah. Explain that.
So the way I look at it is,
because it makes sense. I mean,
my brother came out today. He took the day off of work, right? And he spent the time and money to come out early in the morning. He wants to go out and hunt. And that deer that we've been looking at on cameras, that we've been glassing in the field, that we've been planting food plots for and all that other stuff, that beautiful animal that we've been watching and enjoying, last night somebody comes out at midnight and shoots it with a rifle from a truck. They stole that deer from my brother, okay? That could have been my brother's first real deer. That could have been my granddad's last deer. And that's the way that I look at it. When my son or my brother or my granddad wants to go out and enjoy those types of things and somebody steals that resource. Now, the guy last night, he's entitled to do that today. Okay, with the right gun.
With the shotgun.
But he's got to give it fair chase. And so that's, to me, that's where the theft comes in, is he's stealing from me as a hunter. He's stealing from you.
Everybody.
And from everybody. And so those types of things, when you see your neighbor doing that, and he stole that deer from you, it's frustrating for me. And I believe you should apply the fair chase model. Go out there, give that animal a reasonable effort to be harvested legally, and then, that fair chase aspect. Otherwise, it's just pure theft. And if you're going to be cutting corners out there and stealing that natural resource from the rest of us,
you got it coming to you.
Yeah. And so that's to me, that's how I look at it. When you're out there, it's a theft. You're taking that animal from everybody, the people that are doing it lawfully.
Well, let me ask you a question from since Illinois is a magnet for non-residents.
Sure.
They have this huge reputation for really big deer and other good hunting and waterfowl as well. You have a lot of non-residents that come here. Do you find that non-residents are pretty ignorant of the law or don't do their homework or are more apt to follow the law? Or is there really any difference between a resident and non-resident?
Only the ones from South Carolina. Those guys are terrible.
Well, the inbreeding affects our
Everybody else, with anybody, these guys, we welcome everybody to the state. Just enjoy it responsibly, right? Get a chance to take a look at the digest. If you're going to be going with an outfitter, get a reputable outfitter. If you're going to be coming in and doing a hunt on your own at one of our state parks or one of our areas, try and hook up with somebody in the area ahead of time through social media or some, just to kind of get the lay of the land and understand things. There's books, there's DVDs. Hey, there's podcasts out there that you can listen to, right?
That's right.
That's going to give you a heads up in terms of what to be looking for out there and stuff. So, it depends. I hunt in other areas, not a lot. I've went up to Canada a couple of times. I've been out to Alaska, and it's daunting. You pull in there in Alaska, and even for me as an officer, I'm like, okay, I got to make sure this and that, and I'm going with a guide,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, okay, where's this and where's that? And I'm applying all these Illinois rules that I know because I'm hypersensitive to it.
That's right.
And reading through the book, and this guy's like, hey, I've been doing this for 30 years. Don't worry, And so you try and do the best that you can and act innocently enough and stuff. But sometimes you get out there and it's your responsibility to kind of figure that out. So we try and understand a little bit of that. Non-residents and residents alike, there's good and there's bad and there's ugly and all that. So
right.
We don't necessarily say this guy's from South Carolina, he's going to be, one way, or this guy's from Texas, he's going to be another way. It all depends on their training, their experience, and their love for the outdoors. Some guys come in, first-time hunter, but they just want to do absolutely everything right, and they've got everything right. Down to their fall harness, their gun is perfect. Everything is all set up.
Okay.
Other guys, it just kind of depends. And we have neighbors just like that.
That's right.
That do that. So
Okay.
No faults to anybody from in or out of the area. The out-of-state guys maybe need to read a little bit more, or maybe they ask one additional question just because they weren't brought up around all the Illinois laws and stuff.
Right.
But I'll tell you brought up a valid point, and that is, if you're going somewhere, look up that local game warden. Mm-hmm. Connect with them.
Yeah.
Just because, who better to talk to?
That's exactly right.
Really?
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
I get calls all the time from different places. And if I can answer a question, if I know the area, it's no problem. I'll meet up with you if you have a question or something. We'll have a cup of coffee. And
who pays?
It just depends.
Not the state of Illinois.
If it's good coffee, then
Yeah.
But so, there's all sorts of information out there. There's websites, our numbers are posted, our email address.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody here can email me if they have any questions.
Do you want us to give out your personal cell phone number right now for you?
Absolutely, yes.
Oh, okay, good.
This is where I live.
Podcast.
Right.
Yeah.
Stop in anytime.
No
Yeah.
problem.
24/7. I'm always
That's
open,
right.
right? Yeah, just what you need.
You'd be surprised at how many people come rolling down that lane. You hear the gravel down the way, and Jenny calls and says, "There's a guy here. He's in a truck. He's wearing camo."
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Hey Steve, I got a question. Sometimes I'm in
I have a phone. You could just call me.
I did I write for outdoor magazine and stuff. And I did a story with the South Carolina game warden last year, and his answer to the question of what's the most common mistake people make is duck hunters not having PFDs.
Oh yeah.
He said that is the most common thing they run into is they think I got all my duck gear.
Sure.
But all the boating laws apply as well because they're in a boat.
I didn't even think about that.
See? Now, is that something
I
that
guess
you run
we never
into
go
as
on a
well?
boat.
There's
We're always on the ground.
Yeah.
wherever there's an overlap because they're in a boat, they have to have their PFD, they have to have their throw cushion, they have to have all those different things. Gun has to be in a case.
I'll tell you what we did, and I'm going to tell you right now, was absolutely tremendous. When we got our boat, I had Steve come look at it. And there was, again, being transparent. And he walked right through and he said, you need your hydrant. You know what I mean? You need
Fire hydrant.
Fire extinguisher, yeah.
Not fire hydrant.
You said hydrant.
That's what you
I said
said.
hydrant,
Oh,
yeah.
son of a gun.
Extinguisher,
Well, if you had one of those, it'd probably be better.
You don't really need a fire hydrant when you're in the water.
Extinguisher.
You're in the water, just get a pump.
That helped us so much because having a boat was fairly new to us. You know what I mean? At the time. It still is, yeah.
But we do see that with waterfowl, and you'll see different wardens in different parts of the state. Of course, we've got the Mississippi River, but it's just on the outside of my patrol district. So
so you don't
check
have
duck
that
hunters
line.
every day. I used to work Lake Michigan, so we didn't have a lot of deer hunters, shotgun deer hunters over there. So one of my more common violations would be a boating violation that would be out there, a fishing license violation due to the population density. But I don't know how many times you come in, the guy's got his full decoy spread, everything, and the kitchen sink piled up in the front of his boat. And I said, hey, show me 2 wearable life jackets. And he thinks, well, they're not even accessible. What would happen? They're way down in the bottom, And so generally the first inspection, they're like, oh boy, and they start digging and digging and digging. And I remind them, I said, hey, you're going out at 2:00 in the morning. There's wing dams out here. There's other boats. There's obstructions. You're probably going in some flooded water.
It's cold.
It's
You got
cold.
on heavy clothes.
Heavy clothes, you hit a stump or do something, or even if you just bump and fall overboard. So then you're going to be running into those issues types of, So accessibility is a big thing for us. The fire extinguisher, they're cooking in there in the morning. They're making their sandwiches, got an open stove or whatever. Make sure that's accessible. You have a fuel source here. You've got a gas can over here. You've got,
I've never understood that. Why they have an open flame right next to their gas tank.
Yeah, well, because the biscuits and gravy aren't going to cook themselves.
It's like watching someone go pump their gas and they got a cigarette.
Right.
You're like, oh my
I'm going to the other
goodness.
side of the gas station. Yeah.
So, but, oftentimes they're taking a recreational boat and they're retrofitting it for an activity.
That's
and so
right. Yeah.
we do the best that we can to try and remind them, hey, have this stuff available. And the guys that I check on a regular basis, bingo, Steve airs everything right there in a tote, opens it up, fire extinguisher, whistle, all the safety equipment, and they keep that right next to them.
Well, one of the things that a buddy and I do, we don't duck hunt a lot, but we do 3 or 4 times a year. We have a go bag. That's our duck bag. And in that, now we don't have to, the boat is under 19 feet, so we don't need a fire extinguisher down there. But we have our whistle, we have our air horn, we have the other, I can't remember, flare, some kind of lighting source that's out, that's different from the battery, so you can be seen. So we have all these things that the law requires in that bag,
Right.
and that's in our, just for our duck bag. And we have another bag for when we go alligator hunting at night. We have another bag that has different things in it.
Right.
So that way we just grab that, we go through, make sure it's right, but now we know we're legal.
Right.
And anytime we're duck hunting, because we wear waders in case we have to get out to put our decoys out, I'm like, I'm having my life jacket on because if these things fill up,
Oh yeah.
I'm going to the bottom. I mean, it's hard to float in full waders.
Yeah.
So wear your life jackets if you're waterfowl hunting out of a boat or even standing in water. I think it's smart even for guys hunting flooded timber to be wearing a life jacket because you can fall over, step in a hole. I'm a trapper by trade outside of riding, so I'm in swamps all the time, trapping beavers and things like that. So it's easy to fill your waders up.
Oh yeah.
Really easy to do that. So with since I mentioned trapping, there's a segue. Y'all have tell me about trapping violations and things that trappers should look for. It's a common thing that is a mistake that they make that they don't mean to.
Oftentimes the biggest mistakes we see are the fur prices going up and a lot of young trappers coming out, a lot of new guys that are coming out, and they're trying to take advantage of participating in that sport a little bit to try and gather some income, at the expense of the resource. And so guys just go to the store, they buy some dog-proof traps or some leg holds or even conibears or whatever, and they go out and they set them, and they just don't know the regulations, whether it's having their name and address on the trap or checking them once a day. Those are the biggest issues that we have. Illinois has instituted a mandatory safety class for trapping for people born after a certain date and stuff. So that's
just
kind of
like
new.
the hunter education, you have a trapping education
Trapping
class.
education, yeah.
That's a really good idea.
And so as the fur prices fluctuate and stuff, I hear old stories about being back in the 80s where, a raccoon was worth $40, so everybody would stop on the road.
It was ridiculous how much they were in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
A high school friend of mine bought a house on catching fox for one season. A house from high school.
Of course, that was in South Carolina.
Yeah, and their fur prices are much lower.
Right.
Because we're comparing.
Well, they don't have the winter hides right?
That's what I'm saying. Is you have a South Carolina fox with
A what?
a South Carolina fox.
Okay.
With
Did you get that?
I wasn't really sure what that
special.
was.
Yeah.
with 5/8 inch fur compared to an Illinois fox that's going to have 1.5 inch fur. Their prices
in
are
other
much
words,
greater for the
you're saying
Illinois fur.
Our foxes are better.
You got some great foxes up here.
Okay.
You got some foxy foxes too.
Foxies, yeah.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah, and y'all have more reds too. But anyway, the prices in 78 through 84 were just ridiculous. I mean, they're $300 for a fox. Yeah, and paying people catching 1,000 of them a year. It's ridiculous.
All right, talking about trapping, you have to check them every day.
Every 24 hours.
So here in Illinois, the law is check them once per calendar day. So to the average person, you say, I'm going to check them every day. Well, you have to check them once per calendar day. So what that means is that today, between 12:01 a.m. this morning and 11:59 tonight, or 12 o'clock tonight, you have to check that trap once. And then tomorrow, between that 12 or 12:01 to the
11:59.
So if I wanted to, I can go out tonight and I could run my line at 11:30, and then I could run it again at 12:30. So I could run it out
Gotcha.
at 11:30, and it's the stroke of midnight. I could then run it back, and so now I've checked my
Your
traps
for 2 days in a row, but
once per calendar day. Right. So
And that's important to distinguish because as I was telling them in South Carolina, we have a window of darkness we can check. 1 hour before daylight, 1 hour after sunset.
okay,
That's it. And that's new. It used to be only during daylight hours we could check traps.
really?
Yeah, and 2 years ago, the Trapper Association finally had it pushed that we could check after dark because it gets dark so freaking early.
It does.
You know,
yes.
Okay, so here's this. We have a spy point camera. It's a link. It goes to our phone or our computer. Can you use that?
if you were to put it on your trap.
Yeah. So I have to look at the law.
That's a very valid point. That's a good point.
Yeah, well, so
more
as
and more,
to-
they're
as-
getting so much. The price of them are getting so much cheaper, and to operate them, you know what I mean. To
That's
get that, I'm just.
As technology evolves, we're constantly refining the laws, trying to come up with ways that are going to be able to accommodate a good, safe, healthy harvest of an animal that's responsible. And if you could utilize that technology to employ that, great. Assuming that they're not going to be using that to exploit it. And
Yeah.
so,
Right.
Which, like you said, there's good apples and there's bad apples
Well, it's
everywhere.
Actually, now I don't want to digress too much, but there's 2 states that just outlawed cell cameras.
Really?
Totally.
entirely. Yes.
Nevada and Arizona,
Okay.
because they say it provides an unfair advantage to the wildlife. And I don't want to get it wrong on the podcast, but one of those
Right.
states, the conservation officer documented 30 plus cameras on one water hole. 30 plus
Oh.
cameras on one water hole because they're desert states. So the animals
Right.
flock to the water hole. So the guys are watching, the animals are coming to the water hole. All the trucks drive out there. And so more and more states are putting very strong restrictions on cell cameras.
Gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, we don't have ours come instantly to us. That would drive me crazy. That's
So we have such poor cell reception
Well,
anywhere.
yeah, same here.
They're not like
But that might
where
be
my
something to
land
look
is.
into.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just because.
Like where my land is, we don't have cell service, so those
Right.
cameras would do me no good. So, but anyway, water trapping, you have any issues with that versus not much of a difference?
There's a few different sizes of traps that you could use in the water that you can't use on land.
have the
And,
same
and
thing, yeah.
same thing with, a snare or something along those lines and stuff.
Yeah.
But in this area, the trapping, I think it's almost a forgotten pastime. We just don't have it. The fur prices just aren't up. And so kids nowadays, they're struggling with, playing a video game or doing something else.
Fortnite or
whatever.
trapping, yeah.
Yeah, Fortnite or trapping, so.
And that's a shame too. As a trapper
Yes.
by profession, it's one of the best ways to learn the woods.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you can get an animal to step in a 4-inch circle,
Right.
then killing them at 40 yards is nothing.
We'll be right back with more Ralph and Vicki's Off-Grid podcast with your host, Pete Rogers.
I've seen the proof. I know the truth. This is what I was made to do. I was born for this.
Welcome back to Ralph and Vicki's Off-Grid podcast with your host, Pete Rogers. We're coming to you from the Hunter's Blend Coffee Studio. Now, let's get back into this week's show.
Yes.
As far as
Right.
the difficulty is so much harder to get that predator to put their foot exactly where you want them to.
Yeah.
So why'd you miss that buck?
Because I choked.
Okay, I was
freaking
checking.
choked. I'm not going to. I own that. I choked. I shot a foot over his back. And it was filmed.
Happens to the best.
That's all of us.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
All right. So
Now, talking about just here, deer. One of the hottest topics in our state, CWD.
chronic wasting disease.
Chronic wasting disease, but also, and we've been fortunate because we communicate with you guys, and the girls, that have the Northern District of Illinois, Northwestern District.
Right.
So we ain't. I'm telling you right now, we ain't kissing no butt, but we have seen it and heard it about how you guys are managing, putting big bait piles, shooting 60 deer in an evening, and
Filling up dump trucks.
Filling up dump trucks.
Right,
yeah,
right.
and then just wasting the animals.
You've
heard those rumors.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
Let's make sure you're saying it's a rumor. It's not a fact.
Yes,
okay.
they are rumors.
So we want Steve to clarify that
Yes.
rumor. Okay.
With any biology practice, there's always going to be contention between science and passion. And so for us, chronic wasting disease, came into the state about 20 years ago. And the biologist, started to manage it the best way they saw fit. And one of the things that were part of that management program for us in Illinois was the herd reduction or deer reduction densities in certain areas. And that means that officers at times and biologists would go out and then participate in a sharpshooting program. And so oftentimes, there's misinformation going out about how we have this onslaught of deer, and then we just take them and either leave them lay or throw them in a ditch or whatever. And most of this stuff is just simply untrue. We've got the Northern Illinois Food Bank repository where we bring all the deer to. They individually test each of the deer. They grind them, and assuming the deer comes back clean, it goes to the food pantry. Every deer that we harvest is taken into our possession. We don't have stacks and mounds and stuff. Really, people think it's an easy process to go out in the middle of January, February, and sit over a bait pile, when it's dark and cold, 6 o'clock, to maybe 10 o'clock at night, and, just shoot a million deer. Deer act very similar at night as they do during the day. When a gun goes off, they all run, so we don't have a turret gun of death, that just kind of lays all these animals down. So, during the participation, if you could go out, and same thing with baiting sites and everything, if you go out one site, and get a deer once or twice a week, that's about average, just as it would be average for you out here. Yes, you've got that concentrated food source that's bringing them in and stuff, but they're still animals, and they still react to threats and dangers the same way. So I don't know where they get these pictures from and everything, but to us, it's comical, and you're going to get that no matter what. And in some of the industries, people are just going to try and, focus on certain exploits, and people gobble that up. It's fodder, it's rumors and stuff like that. And
it's not true.
Oh,
let's make sure.
Yeah, and it's definitely not true.
We emphasize that it's not
true. It's
true.
kind of like playing that game operator where, you say one thing and gets to Ralph, and Ralph says it, and he makes it even larger, and it just kind of goes around. Then all of a sudden we're like, Steve, you guys killed an entire dump truck full of deer last night. He's like, no.
We killed two.
And I've had people too, they say, well, I hear there's this. I said, hey, call me. I'm going to call the director. We're going to come out, and we're going to arrest that person that did that, because that's against our protocol. And I have yet to get that call. Right. Or there's a truck over here or whatever. Boy, geez, there's mountains in the background. We don't have mountains in Illinois. So for some reason, there's certain topics within the outdoor industry: cougar sightings,
cougar sighting,
chronic wasting disease, and Sasquatch. Those three, they all kind of, we get that type of thing.
That is such a hot topic in South Carolina. Black Panthers.
Oh
my
and
gosh.
We're looking at a picture, and they said they had this cougar panther come through.
Yeah.
And it's a trail camera photo, and you truly look at it, and you're like, that's a barn cat.
Yeah.
It's a barn cat.
Yeah.
Oh, but if you post it.
Oh, my gosh.
And the biggest thing is, like, it's always a black panther in South Carolina. And it's like, I don't care how many times you say there's never been a documented melanistic mountain lion in the history of documentation.
So wait a minute. Let me get this clear.
It's never happened. So you can't have one that doesn't exist.
The state did not bring in cougars.
So, it started out with
They
the deer
brought in coyotes
population.
to South Carolina. That's what they're saying.
So what we did was too many deer, so we ended up dropping a bunch of these spider monkeys down, right? To kill the deer, right? And then the spider monkeys were climbing up the trees, and we got overpopulated with the spider monkeys, so we had to, and then we got the cougars to climb up the trees. Now there's overabundance of cougars, so now we're putting in timber rattlers all throughout the state.
To kill the cougars.
Yeah, to kick the cougars down.
Okay.
And
where does Sasquatch come in?
Yeah.
He eats the timber rattlers.
Oh, does
That's
he?
right.
Yes.
That's right.
That's
And then he makes beef jerky out of it.
Yes.
That's the guy. That's the guy.
That was one big giant rumor.
We just
to be
solved
clear.
all the rumors.
Right.
You know what I
Just
mean?
solved all the
Just
rumors right
now.
there.
All the rumors right there.
Yeah.
That's some
Yeah.
powerful podcasting
What
right
is
there.
so fascinating to me is I hear these same things in South Carolina, so we're not isolated in that.
And
Oh,
the
no.
wolves,
They're
wolves
everywhere.
too, right?
Right.
Wolves, gotta add wolves to us.
Now we do have red wolves in South Carolina. They were
No, we have wolves
reintroduced.
in Illinois. Allegedly.
No, ours are red
we
wolves.
do. No, we have
Ours
wolves.
are the red wolves.
We've
They
got
were
timbers.
reintroduced.
We got
Yes.
timbers.
We got timber wolves.
Yeah. For some reason, there's just a short path in the mind, and some people are receptive to it. I go to these calls all the time. I've been doing it for years. People have shown me pictures, and I could show them, you know, in this photo, here's this cat, and it's in your backyard, and the grass is 4 inches tall, and his back is an inch above that. But for some reason, you think it's a 220-pound cat, and you know, unfortunately, I don't know what it is. We've all been out there. We've seen a flash off in the distance. It might have been a coyote. It might have been something else, a fox with mange or something, and we couldn't see it, and automatically like, oh my goodness,
Your mind.
It's
Well,
a cougar.
and
So-
you know, as a journalist, one of the places where I've had to come to is I'm not going to tell you didn't see what you thought you saw.
right.
However, and I wrote this whole story on the search for the Carolina cougar, where I contacted the DOT.
Right.
The conservation officers, how many miles of roads do we have? How many game cameras are out there? How many hours of hunters are out there? And there's never been one hit by a car. There's never been a documented game camera picture. There's never been one killed by a hunter or angler or anybody else.
Right.
So I'm not saying it's not there. You didn't see what you saw. The odds are very slim.
Right.
Right.
Has
Odds are
there
very
been
slim.
a documented cougar in this area?
So we had one
Yeah.
down in
No,
Morrison.
I know. That's what.
Right.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago.
Yep.
It was reported as a bobcat when it came through. And in fact, it was a juvenile transient out of the Dakotas that had come through. So for us.
Out of the Dakotas.
Yeah, out of the South Dakota. So for us, you know, it's not saying that we don't have habitat that's conducive for the animal. It's just the likelihood or the frequency that people report them. You know, apparently they're on every street corner. Yeah. And so one thing that I look at, and I have to be careful sometimes when I say this to the public, is that, you know, if there's a cat that ranges between 120 pounds to 220 pounds, is about 3 foot at the shoulder and 7 to 8 feet long in your backyard, if you saw that cat, you call 911, but instead they call their cousin Cletus. You know, you know what I'm saying? And so part of that is just that. In Utah, British Columbia, these other states that have bona fide cat sightings, right? They have
You got me, man. I'm dying.
Well,
I
they
gotta
have
have a
bona fide
drink.
cat sightings. They have a protocol. They close the school. Okay, they have this. They have that. They've got heavy restrictions on garbage, trash pickup, and all that stuff. So you look at these protocols out there for big. They've got signs and everything that are posted. So if a guy calls me and says, "Hey, I just saw 2 cougars underneath my tree stand," I'm calling the school. Well, don't call the school. Well, you have an apex predator, 220 pounds, that's going to carry somebody away.
Yeah.
Well, maybe, you know, and so that's what it is. You know, and we do get that. So people, you know, and whether that resonates in the mind or not, it's to me, it's very true, because if we walked outside and there was a bear here, Ralph, if there was a bear, okay, and you've
That'd
been
be really
around
cool.
bear your whole life, you'd be on the phone going, there's something that doesn't belong here. It's a black bear or whatever. And we had a black bear in our area. And it's on
Yes,
the
we
front
did.
page of every newspaper.
Yep.
Okay.
And you guys
Came
had
down from Wisconsin.
You had a parade of people going to see this bear.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, it was a big thing. Big news out here.
What did you guys hear, Ralph? Here's a question for you. When you're out and you're hunting, and in those areas that you have a mountain lion, what's your protocol? What do they say? What are you supposed to do? So,
Well, you know what? Honestly, we can go back to when we hunted in New Mexico a bunch of years ago, and we were hunting elk.
Who?
And filming wise, and you're sitting there, and then all of a sudden it was
We were
one of those-
cow calling.
It was a sixth sense. You felt something was staring at you.
And the cat's coming. The cat. We look, and here's a cat in attack position, just slowly
Crawling at 'em.
coming at us.
right,
So we stood up and yelled.
right.
Cat didn't do a dang thing. So we threw something. Cat stopped. Started coming again. So we all, you know, we had a bulwark and we stood up and, you know,
Oh no! Because,
finally, when everybody stood up, there were 3 of us, everybody stood up, that the cat, you know, acknowledged, whoa, outnumbered, I don't know what it acknowledged, but
Right.
it took off. Well, we come down the mountain and
There
they
was a
had
game check
They had
there.
a game check,
checking all the vehicles coming off the mountain.
which was cool. And we asked them, what would you do?
What's protocol? What are we
What's
allowed
protocol?
to do?
And they said you do everything in your power to stop that cat from, attacking you.
Right.
But I mean, I think common sense also, as you were saying earlier, each situation is different. If someone's lying or you can pry enough to find out.
But it's their experience. I think as your research showed as well, their experience is genuine. They think they saw a cougar.
That's right.
Right.
And so for us though, that registered within your mind and you knew, and it was a real liability for you.
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah.
But when you ask the people that have seen them in South Carolina and over here, was it a real liability? Well, no, I didn't call anybody. I didn't think. So that's the big difference.
That's the big difference.
In your mind, if the liability exists there, you're calling 911 because
right.
we're not walking out here, guys. I'm letting everybody know there's a cougar in the backyard. You're calling your neighbors, get your dogs in. If there's really a cougar here, we need to lock the place down.
You're in almost panic mode at that point.
Right. And so, that experience you had.
Psychologically, truly, understanding that, you can pretty much tell that.
I'm not a doctor, right?
No, not
right.
you, but anybody.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
The experience you had right there was, you knew, right? There wasn't like, I think I saw.
Yeah, no.
And you don't qualify.
I'm going to tell you right now, we were scared because this cat was coming to kill you.
Well, I think the comment was made, you guys look like a couple of pork chops out there, and that cat was coming to get him.
This freaking thing was,
He was hungry.
It was, I've been around him. I'm telling you, we
was ready.
all,
Yeah.
we were,
Yeah. So but we didn't want to. We can't keep Steve all day. Although
we can't.
We could do that. So
I love talking about cats.
I like talking about any of this stuff, outdoor stuff. Is there something else that you can think of that the public may need to know as far as safety, conservation, make sure that you're doing things right? We hadn't even talked about fishing or anglers or any of that. Maybe common mistakes that people like that make, other than what we have at home is over the limit, no license. When it comes to that.
One thing, if I could ask people, take into consideration buck fever, and when you're out, for some reason it takes a good person, and sometimes will push them in a direction that they normally wouldn't go. And we find this on a regular basis, where you've got a member of the society that wouldn't think about not wearing his seatbelt when he drives down the street, but for some reason, that buck on the neighbor's property, or those ducks sitting on the anti-hunter's pond or something, and it almost consumes you, so think about fair chase, think about proper harvesting. And, over the years, I could tell you the hundreds of people that, church members and dentists and doctors and lawyers and, all sorts of people that succumb to this, and it's a real thing.
Right.
Buck fever is a real thing.
Right.
Whether it's you're planted to ducks or turkeys or geese or whatever. And so you see something that's coming through, and you got that, that big strut, that turkey, that adrenaline, this and that. You got to stop and think, well, there's two in there. I can't flock shoot, or here comes the second one, and I just got the first one, and I can't harvest the second one.
Or he's on somebody else's property.
It's on somebody else's property. He's this and that, and so.
Or you just shot one buck, don't shoot another.
Right. So those types of things. And then also, if you do have an oversight, and say it's a legitimate thing, you're out, you shoot a turkey, and you get up, hey, everything's fine. You go up there, and there's two of them laying there dead. And so from that perspective, if you can, call us. We understand people make mistakes, and I've had young and old call up and say, you know what, Steve, I'm just beside myself. This thing's here. I don't want it to go to waste. At the same time, it's haunting me, and I don't want it here. I made a mistake. This deer come in this morning. It was absolutely perfect. I got a nice doe tag, and I got up there, and I'm telling you, it's got 3.5-inch spikes on the top.
And three is a buck.
I just didn't know. Right.
Yep.
And 3's the limit. So rather than you knocking them off with a hammer or something, calling us and, hey, if I could work something out with you, let's get it donated to the hunger program. Let's try and make this right.
That's right. Yeah.
And depending on, the innocence or the malice behind it and stuff, we definitely can work some things out. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get a ticket. Doesn't mean that you're not going to get a warning. But,
Do the right thing.
Do the right thing. And
Do
when
the
you're
right
out
thing.
there,
Transparency.
be transparent. Get to know your local game warden if you can. There's not a lot of us around, but wherever it is that you go, we enjoy the outdoors just as much as anybody else. And so when I get a call from somebody that I've met before and they got a question or there's an issue, it's so much easier for me to talk to them on the phone. Hey, Steve, there's a deer stuck on the fence here. It's really bad. It's suffering. Is it okay if I put it down? Sure, Ralph. Yeah, no problem. Go ahead and put it down. Snap a picture of it if you don't mind. Bring it back. You could harvest the meat if anything's good. So once you get a chance to know your local game warden, it's a lot easier to be a steward of the land and to, appreciate what's out there for all of us to enjoy responsibly.
And I got to say something on closing. Getting to know our game wardens, the benefits, and I'm not saying this because you're here. I'm really, you've called us up because we work here. This is where we work, and said, listen, we've got a bald eagle that's dead or that's wounded or the fawn. Remember the fawns?
Yep.
That again. Probably one of the biggest mistakes.
Public service announcements, though.
Public service announcement. We were
helped
able
them.
to work together, and he brought a fawn that someone grabbed. That if they would have left alone, Mom would have been there. The doe would have been there, but didn't happen. Steve brought it. We actually were able. RJ was actually able to hold the fawn, but we utilized it. We put it on social media, and
As a public service announcement to leave them be.
leave them be. And I mean, it went viral. I mean, it went crazy. Yeah, and we've worked together, and that's the thing. Be transparent, but also, they'll bring you stuff to show you, to witness that I'm telling you, you
wouldn't normally get to see.
You'll never have that opportunity, and it's been priceless.
And I think it's important to point out too is that conservation officers, game wardens, fish cops, whatever people want to call you, that's not a bad name. They're there to help us and to help the resource. So many sportsmen and women think that, well, they're just trying to get a quota. They're looking for people to break laws. They're trying to do that, but it's the opposite. They're protecting the resource that we value so much.
You're right.
And so I personally applaud you for what you do. Thank you for all you do.
Seriously.
For all the conservation officers out there.
And thanks for sitting down and chatting with us on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this means a lot to us. It does.
It does.
I'm happy to do it. And you know what? Any guys in your area, reach out to them. I know guys would love to share this message, whether you're part of a group or an organization, your church group, your Kiwanis Club, your Boy Scout group and stuff. And we do all this because every little seed that we could plant helps out. Now it's just not my two eyes out there. I've got six more.
Right.
I've got another more and more and more. And, once you get a chance to know us, hey, he's not a bad guy. Hey, I saw something that wasn't right here. I saw this or saw that. And we're here to help.
And I want to touch that before we close. I know we're running out of time. Is that when you see somebody violating a game law, report it.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Don't think you're tattletelling or you're a snitch. You're helping protect the resource. Report it. I know my local game warden say if it wasn't for people calling us, there's a lot of things would go by the wayside. So if you see somebody breaking a game law, report them. Call at home as Operation Game Thief.
Right.
I don't know if y'all have the same number or something, but there's a number I'm sure somebody can call if they don't have your number in order to get a hold of your local conservation officer and report violations. And just as my wife said, it's more important to do the right thing than to be right. So just do the right thing. Do the right thing. Thank you, Steve, for being with us.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks,
Really appreciate it.
Yep.
So we're going to wrap up this episode of Off Grid with Ralph and Vicki. I'm your host, Pete Rogers, and we want to thank Steve Beltran, the Illinois Conservation Officer, for being with us today. And if you haven't subscribed to us, please do.
Thanks for listening to this week's podcast. We hope you come back again for more Ralph and Vicki's Off Grid podcast with your host, Pete Rogers.